from the economic recession and expressed confidence in ongoing efforts to address factors responsible for the hyperinflation recently recorded by the country. Speaking at the opening of the 26th session of the Nigerian Economic Summit tagged Building Partnerships for Resilience, the Vice President said the economic sustainability plan is private sector-led with a view to returning to economy on the path of sustained positive growth. Leah Katung Babatunde completes the story.
Gathered here and virtually are global policymakers, business leaders, development partners, scholars and youth for a big conversation for action on the Nigerian economy. Though the initial plans were around partnerships, the recession, a consequence of the coronavirus pandemic, was a key feature, and the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo took time to itemize efforts by the government to build confidence and restore growth, among which is the reduction in levies for imported vehicles from 35% to 5%. A decision, he says, was taken to ease the cost of transportation, a prominent factor responsible for the sharp rise in inflation figures. He virtually declared the summit open with an assurance that the economic sustainability plan will achieve its target.
All the programs in the ESP, that's the Economic Sustainability Plan, are reliant on the private sector playing a key role in creating and conserving jobs and the production and delivery of services in agriculture, in housing, in solar power, and digital technologies, to mention just a few sectors. To take the example of agriculture, with the support of the banking sector, the federal government is working to organize finance for farmers, and we're also guaranteeing uptake of the produce. This is the mass agriculture program which the federal government has undertaken.
The summit is hinged on three pillars: collaboration, execution, and impact. Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning Zainab Ahmed is optimistic that the country will get out of recession by the first quarter of 2021.
Yes, through the vigorous implementation of the Economic Sustainability Plan and also ensuring that there is liquidity within the system, funding government's budget for all ministries, departments and agencies to implement their programs and projects.
We must rise to deliver our economy, and an economy that is worthy of our stewardship, and protect our population from the scourge of poverty and exclusion. No excuses, no ifs, no buts.
The subnationals are fully carried along in the conversation this year with a view to gain traction for Nigeria to meet the SDGs target by the year 2030. In Abuja, Leah Katung Babatunde, NTA News.
The federal government has formally protested to the management of Cable News Network on the recent investigative report on the NSAS crisis. The letter was signed on behalf of the Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, by the Special Assistant to the President, Office of the Information and Culture Minister, Segun Adeyemi.
Addressed to Mr. Jonathan Hawkins, Vice President Communication, CNN Center, Atlanta, Georgia, the letter expressed the federal government's displeasure over the report, which CNN aired on the 18th of November. The federal government described the report as not only falling short of journalistic standards, it reinforces the disinformation going round on the issue as blatantly irresponsible and a poor piece of journalistic work by a reputable international news organization like the CNN. Drawing attention to certain facts that the report did not live up to basic core principles of journalism, which are balance and fairness. Rushing to air such a momentous story without presenting government side is inexcusable and indefensible, saying the claim by CNN that they contacted over 100 protesters and their family members and did not speak with any federal government official, the army, and the claim that Lagos state government officials declined comments. CNN, however, did not say efforts it made to speak with any federal government official. The truth, the federal government pointed out, is that CNN never made any attempt to reach the federal government, citing the reporter Nima Elbagiru, who probably led the investigation, is conversant with Information and Culture Minister, who is a spokesperson for the federal government of Nigeria. To this end, the letter reads, "It is strange to say the least that Nima will rush to air such an important investigative report without getting the government side. In other words, Nima and by extension CNN, breached the most basic of the core principles of journalism: balance and fairness. Another serious breach by CNN in its investigation is that the network relied heavily on unverified footages it harvested from social media, as neither its reporter nor cameraman was there, but it relied on eyewitnesses. Again, the letter drew CNN's attention to its official Twitter handle, which it tweeted on the 23rd of October that 38 people have been killed, only for CNN again to mention that one person was killed in its report. It is equally surprising that CNN had footages showing vehicles carrying soldiers left the barracks and how they arrived at Lekki tollgate, but couldn't obtain footages of those killed. With CNN saying it stands by its report, the federal government of Nigeria finds this position baffling, considering the fact that the report lacks fairness and balance. This face-saving measure by respectable news network, caught in the blinding glare of fake news and disinformation, explains a high level of arrogance in defense. On CNN star eyewitness in the report, DJ Switch, CNN didn't know that DJ Switch's story on Lekki tollgate shooting has changed several times, from claiming she counted 78 bodies, later changed to 15, and now she's claiming 7. For CNN to hold on to DJ Switch as its witness, DJ Switch has credibility problem, hence she can't pass any integrity test. Again, CNN, having obtained those footages, left out vital ingredients, as was the case in the Gustin 57 minutes 5 seconds video, where there were voices in the video telling Gustin that the gunshots were not from soldiers, a valid point which should have made CNN not to go close to those footages. However, CNN was asked why it forgot to mention that 6 soldiers and 37 policemen were killed, while 196 policemen were injured, with monumental destruction of government and private properties during the EndSARS protests. For the records, the federal government says this is not the first time CNN will be airing an inaccurate hoax story about Nigeria. In February 2007, Nigeria accused CNN of staging one of its reports from the Niger Delta region. CNN and its then African correspondent, Jeff Konange, flatly denied the charge. In the end, that's the story today. So, as a form of remediation, the federal government of Nigeria demands an immediate and exhaustive investigation from CNN into its investigative report on Lekki tollgate incident to determine, among others, its authenticity, whether or not it met the basic standards of journalism, and also the selective use of unverified social media videos to manipulate public opinion.
Meanwhile, a national action plan that will serve as a framework for a coordinated response to human trafficking among key players in Nigeria has been developed. Adebola Brooklyn Sunday reports that an interim action plan has been in use since the former document expired in 2012.
Trafficking in persons, analysts say, is a major cause of human insecurity that affects the lives of migrants worldwide. In 2009, the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, developed a 4-year national action plan on trafficking in persons that sets the benchmark for intervention by all stakeholders in Nigeria in the fight against human trafficking. Director General of NAPTIP, Julia Okadonli, said after the validation of the final draft of the 2021-2025 National Action Plan, it will be presented to the Federal Executive Council for approval.
Nigeria has been a pioneer in the region in adopting regulations, establishing institutions, and developing instruments to tackle human trafficking.
The framework was put together by the government of Switzerland, NAPTIP, and United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime.
In a recent report from the European Union, were not more impressive, actually, when we look at the numbers of trafficking victims identified in the European Union that are in the tens of thousands, and still convictions remain in a few hundreds.
If you're Yoruba, you would have heard Bomo Bomo, and all children are very well sensitized to that. The same thing now. We need to sensitize our children because too many of them are falling victim to human trafficking.
The action plan is expected to give a greater impetus to fight against human trafficking and engenders more synergy among key actors. Adebola Brooklyn Sunday, NTA News.
Now joining me to throw more light on this development is the Director General of the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, Julie Oka-Donley. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Well, could you tell Nigerians the essence of this national action plan to the mandate of your agency as a national policy document?
Yeah, the National Plan for Action is a document that sets the benchmark for interventions of all relevant stakeholders. You'll recall that, most times you have various stakeholders performing kind of the same kind of function. There's always repetition. So this document or this policy, serves as, a tool that encourages proper coordination amongst the various stakeholders. It tells you what to do, how to do it, and when to do it. There's a timeline also. For example, like I keep saying that the fight against human trafficking is a fight that involves the whole of government and the whole of society. And when I say government, I mean government at all levels. The MDAs have a role to play. The Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Women Affairs, everyone has a role to play. And it's very important that they know what to do, when to do it, and how to do it. And that's what this document is about, so that we can have a more coordinated approach in the fight against human trafficking.
Okay, as you know, the 2009 action plan expired in 2012. So how have you been coordinating your response, as you said, to human trafficking among the key players in the country?
It hasn't been that easy because we do not have that policy in place, that action plan, that plan in place, for the years from 2012 and upwards. And that's why this document is a very important document, because it becomes a national policy document and every stakeholder is expected to comply with it. And that is why it's very important that this document is implemented and done so quickly.
And recently, you were appointed board member of the Voluntary Support Fund for Victims of Human Trafficking. How can Nigerians in Africa at large benefit from this feat?
Well, as a matter of fact, the United Nations Voluntary Trust Fund for Victims of Trafficking, especially women and children, is a fund that has been made available over a period of years. The fund is actually 10 years old. Nigeria has also been a beneficiary of this fund. The fund is usually given to various NGOs, who are involved in trafficking, in rehabilitation of victims of trafficking, education, and all of that. The fund is actually meant for humanitarian purposes, financial as well as legal purposes, to help victims of trafficking. Nigeria has been benefiting through NGOs, but NAPTIP had never been aware that some NGOs were benefiting from this fund. But now, as the chair of the fund, the trust fund, I will, monitor closely those NGOs who are beneficiaries of this fund to ensure that the funds are used for the purpose for which they are meant for.
Okay, just of recent, a family of traffickers was jailed following the efforts of NAPTIP and other key players. What does this mean for Nigeria?
Well, this is very good for Nigeria because we had a family of three, a mother, the son, and the daughter, who were sent to jail, who were imprisoned for 14 years for the man, 10 years each for the mother and the daughter. I'm very excited because we've hardly gotten such convictions in a while. We usually get very low sentencing. Sometimes we even get fines in lieu of imprisonment. And so this is very good. It sends a very strong signal to potential traffickers and traffickers alike. They know that Nigeria means business.
Oh, that's a strong message there. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the News on Inter International. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, that was the DG NAPTIP, Julie Oka-Donley, talking on the national policy document. Now, moving on, public servants in the country have been brought up to speed on digital literacy in order for them to drive the nation's digital transformation as change agents in their various ministries, departments, and agencies. The latest is the capacity building program put together by Galaxy Backbone in collaboration with NIDA, which was flagged off by the Minister of Communications and Digital Economy, Issa Pantami.
I therefore declare this capacity building program open, and I pray to Almighty to make it beneficial to all of you, to our country, and most importantly, to the implementation of our national digital economy policy and strategy for a digital Nigeria.
Pay much more attention to the deliberations that are going to be made today so that the objective of the event will be achieved.
Having more digital organization in Nigeria, that's what will help us to achieve digital Nigeria.
The 4 days training program has as its theme strengthening the digital drive in Nigeria's federal public sector using Galaxy Backbone Digital Service Platform. You're watching the news on NTR International, coming to you from Abuja, the nation's capital. Time to take a short break. The news will continue in a moment.
Dialogue, empathy, love and unity. These are vital components of nation building.
We have lived in harmony with Igbos, with Hausas, with Edo. Everybody that comes to this state, we have lived in harmony. Because we believe in the unity of this country.
We call for peace, we call for calm, but we also call for justice and accountability.
Let's build and not destroy.
I am there now. Are you sure this will work?
Pastor, I can't miss these guys in trouble. Just keep your phone on so I can listen.
Today we're going to be discussing sleep What is the medical term for sleepwalking?
Sonambulism.
Correct. Get free Intel to Intel quotes and experience HD quality conversations every time. Intel. Live more.
The Federal High Court sitting in Abuja has ordered that the APC senator representing Borno South in the National Assembly, Alindu, may be remanded in Kuje Correctional Center for his failure to produce the former chairman of the defunct pension reform tax team, Abdulrasheed Maina, as his surety. Justice Okonabang delivered the ruling on Monday in the case of alleged fraud and money laundering preferred against him by the EFCC. Olabode Arewa reports that Maina has repeatedly failed to appear in court for continuation of his trial.
The senator representing Borno South Central District, Alindume, sued surety for Abdulrasheed Maina in his bid to obtain bail during Maina's trial for alleged theft of about 2 billion naira during his time as the chairman of the defunct pension reform task team. Following Maina's jumping on bail, owing to his refusal to appear in court to attend to his case, the prosecution prayed the court to invoke the provisions of the bail bond signed by Senator Ndume that he would forfeit 500 million naira and supporting same with title documents to his property located in Asokoro, Abuja, to the government. The court, taking into cognizance the serious absence of Maina, ordered that the surety be remanded in Kuje Correctional Facility pending when he forfeits the 500 million naira or the federal government disposes of the Asokoro property pledged in the bond or Maina is produced in courts.
Our client has been directed to be remanded in Kuje prison and he has given us instructions to test the matter on appeal. We will so test it on appeal.
The case is adjourned to Tuesday, November 24th for continuation. Olabode Arewa, NTA News.
Now, meeting of ECOWAS Parliament Joint Committees in Lomé, Togo has ended with a recommendation for ICT inclusion in education and training. Onenge Fine Face reports on these and other recommendations from the delocalized meeting.
To achieve utilization of ICT in education and training, ECOWAS Parliament is proposing strategies such as creating framework for the establishment of our digital community plan, harmonizing education in the region, and promoting laws favorable to distance education and training.
Permit me to caution that we are likely to face many challenges in implementing the commitments we have made at this meeting. However, Parliament is committed to working with member states in areas related to information and communications technology, science and innovation to digitally connect our societies together. The ECOWAS Parliament stands prepared to follow up on the recommendations emanating from these discussions, and we express our unwavering commitment to working with all stakeholders to make these resolutions a reality.
Speaker Sidi Mohammed Tunis promises collaborations with member states to implement recommendations from the delocalized meeting, which also supports implementation of the ECOWAS Protocol on Education. Onengiye Fine Face, NTA News.
Presidential Task Force on COVID-19, Boss Mustafa is to engage the Nigeria Interreligious Council on ways to scale up risk communication about COVID-19. The PTF also urges Nigerians to suspend youth-high travels or cautiously undertake them to prevent a surge in community transmission of COVID-19. Boss Mustafa points out that COVID-19 is still raging despite nonchalant attitude among Nigerians.
Experiencing a new wave, we must be absolutely careful about where we go to and when we travel, more than ever before. Ahead of the upsurge in travels for Christmas and the New Year festivities, we urge strongly that for this year, such trips should be suspended or cautiously undertaken when and if necessary, or we should put them on hold.
We are by no means out of the woods. Citizens with symptoms suggestive of COVID or those who have had contact with confirmed COVID-19 patients should present themselves in their own interest and the interest of their own families for testing and receive counseling for treatment if positive.
So in addition to the work
and more strides in COVID-19 vaccine development as AstraZeneca vaccine shows average 70% effectiveness. Uche Ogochukwu brings us these and more on happenings around the globe.
3 major breakthroughs in coronavirus vaccines development in 3 weeks, with AstraZeneca reporting its experimental coronavirus vaccine developed with the University of Oxford has shown an average efficacy of 70% in large-scale trials. Meanwhile, the UK medicine regulators said it will make a decision on the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine in the shortest time possible. In the meantime, UK Health Secretary Matt Hancock said the government hopes to start vaccinating people in December, pending approval. Similarly, head of the U.S. COVID-19 vaccine development said the first Americans to receive a COVID-19 vaccine could be immunized as early as the 2nd week of December. However, the Coronavirus Resource Center at Johns Hopkins University shows the global confirmed cases tally nears 60 million. Africa's fatality figure close to 50,000, while Nigeria's total positive cases have risen to 66,383, having recorded 155 new infections Sunday. Looking ahead of the pandemic, President of the African Union, Cyril Ramaphosa, at the just concluded G20 summit in Riyadh, said Africa hopes to work with G20 members to improve its capacity of responding effectively to future pandemics and boosting the regional and global economy. The G20 members in a communique pledged to support African countries in overcoming the impacts of the pandemic. In other developments, the UN has urged Ethiopian authorities to ensure the protection of civilians as the army plans to attack the capital of the northern region, Tigray. Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed had announced a 72-hour deadline for the region's fighters to surrender. On the U.S. election, President Trump's campaign team has distanced itself from a lawyer who made dramatic claims of voter fraud at several media events. Sidney Powell claimed without evidence last week that electronic voting systems had switched millions of votes to President-elect Joe Biden. That's our package. Thanks for your time. I am Uche Ogochukwu.
A dwindling state of global economy is keeping world leaders on their toes and finding solutions to challenges facing the economy of nations. Omeka Marachuku reports that the latest is coming from a book by Adeola Adeoti titled The Portable Handbook for Purposeful Living. Omeka Marachuku reports that the book is a compendium of self-development, investments and management strategies.
The economic meltdown being experienced globally is a great challenge for so many people, but for others, it is a stepping stone for survival. Adeola Adeoti, a young author, is among many who believes the present situation is surmountable. Pragmatic ideas for safe development, investment and human factor management for a purposeful living. She penciled down a 141-page book with 10 chapters are now being presented to the public.
There are a lot of young people that are still struggling with what they should be doing. And in a time such as this, we need to live a very impactful life.
For the book reviewer, Professor Dr. C.J. Dakas, the book is a companion for everyone who desires to live a purpose-driven life for the benefit of mankind.
And as Mark Twain reminds us, there are two most important days in the life of a person: the day you were born and the day you discover why. And this book, I believe, will be very transformative in helping us to better understand why we were born. And once we discover why we were born, we then have a challenge.
And I see the book helping youth in really finding a clear-cut direction for life.
Others advise the youth to imbibe the culture of youth, especially books that direct their actions towards achieving a purposeful life. In Abuja, Omeka Marachuku, NTA News.
This is where the news ends, but before we go, remember